We're going to start by doing the DOGE cuts. Yes. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but approximately 8 days ago, the Philadelphia Eagles, America's team, were crowned Super Bowl champions. And because of that, it's basically impossible for me to get annoyed about anything. And it lasts for months. Last time, it was like good 8 months before I complained about anything in my life. And, it slowly creeps back into your life. You start whining about things. I get that happens. So it's possible I'm just really a good sunny outlook right now. And I'm going to demonstrate that to you with a little story about our friends over at DOGE. And there's a lot of stuff going on over at the DOGE committee these days. Some of it, on the periphery, maybe not so great. But let's talk about the positive things because I'm in a good mood almost all the time right now, frankly. Donald Trump has retruthed? How does this work? I don't even know. The Department of Government Efficiency's message said U.S. taxpayer dollars were going to be spent on the following items, all of which have been canceled. Let's just go through the list. Let's just go through the list together. And I want you to think about this honestly and seriously as we go through this list. Is there anything on this list that you might say, we shouldn't have cut that? Maybe I could see how it's possible that might be worthwhile, that money, you could see the reason why we'd be spending it. Go in it with that mindset here, because it's easy for us to say, well, we shouldn't spend money on anything. And frankly, a lot of that is very true. But go in with a critical eye here. Let's look at it. $10 million for Mozambique voluntary medical male circumcision. Now, there's a lot of things to care about, right, in the world. A lot of things to focus on. The schlongs of men in Mozambique, just really not my concern. And it's no offense to those males. I'm sure their sex lives are very important. I'm sure a lot of the women in Mozambique are interested in that. Maybe they liked that particular development. But I just don't think there's any justification for us in the United States to be spending $10 million on such things. And I want you to think about for a moment, in April, I'm in the middle of some tax situation I'm dealing with at the moment. I made it through somehow the whole Barack Obama term and the entire 2 terms and the entire term of Joe Biden and didn't get audited. And then 2 weeks ago, I got a letter from the IRS. It's an audit letter. So I'm a little upset at the tax system right now. But if you think about it this way, all the money you will ever spend in taxes in your entire life will not even come close, likely, to adding up to just this program where we're talking about male circumcision in Mozambique. Not all of it could go to that, and you wouldn't even come close to spend. Now, I know we have a lot of rich people. I've seen the research on the audience here, and I know it's a very affluent audience. I get it, but probably you're not spending $10 million in taxes, though with inflation, maybe you will pretty soon. I'm just saying it's really frustrating when you think about it that way. All your life's work goes to taxes that don't even pay for this one program. Isn't that great? Let's go more. There's a lot more. $9.7 million for UC Berkeley to develop a cohort of Cambodian youth with enterprise-driven skills. Again, do I think that might be nice? Would it be nice if people in Cambodia had entrepreneurial skills? Sure. Not our responsibility. $2.3 million for strengthening independent voices in Cambodia. We're very focused on Cambodia. Independent voices there, again, that's kind of on them to come up with that, right? $32 million to the Prague Civil Society Center. No. If it was, Bemidji, Minnesota Civil Society Center, I still would say absolutely not. Right? I don't care what civil society center it is, wherever it is, shouldn't be ours, certainly in Prague. No. $40 million for Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Hub. Now, I don't know what goes on at the hub. Could be a lot of fun stuff going on in the hub. I don't know. Do I believe in gender equality? Yeah. Now, that's not what people on the left in America believe in. They believe in some other weird thing where we just create new genders all the time. But like males and females should have equal treatment under the law. Do we want that to happen around the world? Yes, we do. Is that the central government responsibility? I mean, maybe if everything was running perfectly efficiently, we might say, we could use a hub to influence other people around the world. But honestly, that's something that, I would love a good faith-based organization to be working on around the world. I think that's really important, not for the federal government to be doing. $14 million for improving public procurement in Serbia. I really don't care how they procure things in Serbia. That's not our responsibility at all. Not your responsibility. When you work your ass off every single day and you go to work and then you have to pay taxes and those dollars for your entire life add up and they don't even pay for 1 year of public procurement in Serbia, that should piss you off. DOGE has canceled all of these things, they say. How about $486 million to the Consortium for Elections and Political Process Strengthening, including $22 million for the inclusive and participatory political process in Moldova, and in 2020, and $21 million for voter turnout in India. Again, India should be dealing with India's voting system. Moldova, you might say, well, there's some Russian influence there. Maybe there's some foreign policy need for that. Maybe you can make the case, but I pretty much doubt it. And honestly, frankly, in that one in particular, doubt the money's actually going there. Next up, $29 million for strengthening political landscape in Bangladesh. Again, do I want a strong political landscape in Bangladesh? First of all, we don't even have one here. Okay, so I doubt we're actually successful in strengthening it in Bangladesh. But that's kind of on them to figure out. Not our thing. Not our thing. $20 million for fiscal federalism in Nepal. Look, I'm all about Nepalese federalism. I'm sure it's incredibly important, especially fiscally. But again, we should come up with our own fiscal federalism before we deal with that. Because we seem to be lacking in that one lately, especially when everything is federalized by the people spending this money, who are fighting against federalism here. Remarkable. $1.5 million for voter confidence in Liberia. I want Liberian voters to be confident in their vote. I truly do. And I will say, I do believe we actually have a connection to Liberia as a nation. It's a nation, their capital is Monrovia, named after James Monroe. These are people who were slaves at one point, freed slaves, went back and said, you know what? We actually like the American system. And I have a connection. I want, if we're going to dump $1.5 million into voter confidence, Liberia is about as good a target as I can come up with. But still, I don't know that that's our responsibility, at least at this point in our history. Perhaps when we don't have $32 trillion in debt, we look at that program again. $2.5 million for inclusive democracies in Southern Africa. $47 million for improving learning outcomes in Asia. They're already way smarter than us. How can we be giving them money to get smarter? Are you kidding me? Learning outcomes in Asia? These guys are awesome at that. That's the last thing we need. They're kicking our ass all over the place. They got better SAT scores in every single state than we do, naturalized Americans. We can't be giving more money to Asia for better outcomes. We're totally screwed. How about $2 million to develop sustainable recycling models to increase socioeconomic cohesion among marginalized communities in Kosovo, Roma, Ashkali, and Egypt? No. Recycling has completely failed in the United States, let alone what's going on there. All of this money should have been cut, and should never be seen again. Great outcomes from DOGE. Assuming all this comes through, again, it's just a tweet. We don't have all the details that all of these programs have been successfully challenged and removed, but this is the path we're on. And there's a lot of this going on right now. We also have a headline today, $100 billion in COVID-era unemployment fraud now being targeted by Republicans, according to the DOJ. Still 157,000 open UI fraud complaints and 1,648 open investigations. If no congressional action is taken, the current statute will expire on March 27th, leaving thousands of Americans unreimbursed for stolen benefits, and potentially hundreds of fraudsters will be let off the hook. This should be a real priority. I mean, it's not going to make a big difference on the budget. And look, none of those programs I discussed before are going to be, it's like third decimal point stuff in our budget. It's not going to be something that's going to change our financial future. That doesn't mean we don't stop it. We go in there and we make sure we stop this crap, especially with these programs here in America. It's really, really important to stop it, because if you could take advantage of these programs with fraud, then it's going to be basically an open pocketbook for every time a Democrat gets in. They're going to pass these big programs and then flood money, and people are going to be stealing it. We have to send messages to the people who get caught, which, by the way, is just a small fraction of them. But we have to send messages where we can. Really, really important. In the final days, Biden was awarded $50 million to self-dealing charity leader. $50 million grant for a climate program under the Inflation Reduction Act. Biden's signature 2022 spending law is on paper an unbelievable windfall for the Tribal Energy Consortium. The charity posted just under $50,000 in revenue in both 2022 and 2023. But now, along with other Energy Department grants under Biden, the Trump administration is investigating the $50 million handout, says the Washington Examiner. Think about that. You make $50,000 in 2022, $50,000 in 2023, $50 million in 2024. Does that seem corrupt at all? What would happen to your audit situation if you reported that kind of income? Do you think you'd get checked out by the IRS? I think you might. And yet here we are. DOGE says it dug up another $1.9 billion in taxpayer money misplaced by the Biden administration. HUD money that was just recovered after being misplaced during Biden due to a broken process. These funds were earmarked for the administration of financial services, but were no longer needed. Secretary Turner and DOGE worked together to fix the issue and de-obligated the funds, which are now available for other use by the Treasury. All right, more. This is all kind of like winning and winning and winning. They're also looking into Fort Knox. We have a development on this one. Elon Musk encouraged to crack open Fort Knox and audit the $425 billion gold reserves inside. Rand Paul wants to help. Basically, Zero Hedge says it would be great if they could take a look inside of Fort Knox just to make sure the 4,580 tons of U.S. gold are there. Last time anyone looked was 50 years ago in 1974. Elon Musk says surely it's reviewed at least every year. Rand Paul says, nope. So let's do it. So you know, full disclosure here, before all that happened the other day, Glenn Beck had sent our own Glenn Beck had sent a letter to Donald Trump basically requesting to go to Fort Knox and document this for the American people so they can see that this is there or not there. We need to have that information. We need to know what's going on. And he's been talking about this. I mean, Glenn's been talking about this for over a decade of trying to find out what is actually going on with our gold reserves. And he wants to take cameras there and document it. And I think this is something that, Donald Trump may very well be interested in getting out there to the American people, really no matter where it lands. So a lot of really good things happening out there. And it's important to focus on all of that and understand that this isn't an everlasting situation. It feels really good right now. A lot of winning, as they say. But there is, look, reality, political reality is going to hit us here at some point. The left is not going to take all this sitting down. We're only a few weeks into this, and they're not going to go 2 years without a plan. They're going to try to win this election in 2026, and they are going to, you're about to see this, as federal employees get laid off, you're going to meet every single one of them that has a very emotionally moving sob story. Every single mom that lost their job, even though they never had any problems at work and had a great record, and now their kid can't go to the school they were going to, or they can't pay for Little League equipment, or whatever it is, you're going to hear about all of those. And you might say, well, that's stupid, because at the end of the day, we all understand government policy is government policy, and the government is obviously bloated, and some of these employees that will be leaving from the federal government really will be good employees. Some of them will be really good ones that we're going to lose. And that will be a good pickup for the private sector. They will be good available employees there. But you have to understand that just because you and I think that way does not mean everyone else, I was going to say many others do. That might be fair. But there are a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump, who like Donald Trump, who think are open to Donald Trump, or at least hated Joe Biden, that will not like to see these stories. They will not like the chaos. You have to do as much as you can to make sure all of these moves are made as precisely as possible and don't junk up the flow with a bunch of other nonsense. We saw that at the beginning of the last Trump administration. These are what I would refer to as Bannon-esque issues, right? When Steve Bannon was there at the beginning, there's a lot of chaos, a lot of the things they tried to do. They tried to move quickly, but they weren't well planned out. And that's understandable. I mean, never been in government before. Donald Trump was, I think, picking this job up at that time. He's even talked about that since. But now he's come in, and you see these first few weeks, it really does seem like they came in with an actual plan. They knew where they were going and what they were going to do. And even some of the DOGE stuff, which with Elon Musk, if you look at his history, that's kind of the way he does it. And he likes a little bit of the chaos. He wants to overcut. And then, hey, we have to bring you back because you actually are vital to this. You saw this with Twitter. You saw that this happened at SpaceX as well. You go in there, you shake it all up, you see where everything falls, and then you try to fix it a little bit later. It's okay to go a little bit too far. That's an okay situation when you have a private company that you own. It's a little bit more difficult in the situation that we're in now. So it's something to walk out for. And I will say, there's no reason to add chaos to this situation. It's going to be chaotic already. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of employees that are going to lose their jobs. This is going to be difficult to navigate. So don't add to it. Don't add chaos. I'll give you a couple examples of this. Donald Trump tweeting and truthing this and pinning, by the way, this. He who saves his country does not violate any law. Now, look, I will be honest with you on this. If Barack Obama tweeted that exact thing, we would do probably 6 months of shows on it. Because if you're saying, hey, if I think I'm saving the country, I can do whatever the hell I want, which is what that implies, that would be a massive problem for all of us, okay? And it's true that it's a real problem if he means it. And that is a major, major if, because I don't know if he means it. In fact, I don't think he does. We talked about this a lot, and I do have, this is something I admit, I'm being completely face up on the table with my cards here. I got a different standard for Donald Trump than almost every other politician because he does things differently. You may note he's a pretty unique guy. And a lot of times he will say things that he is saying in use of some sort of other end, some sort of negotiation. He's taunting someone. He's just pissed off. He says a lot of things. What I'm concerned about is what he does. We did a whole show on this just last week. I'm not going to sit here and focus on what he says all the time. I'm going to focus on what he does. And I will say that, like, that tweet in particular, pretty problematic as something that a politician would say. I would be if Joe Biden said that, we would be covering it endlessly. Same thing with the thing he said, I think it was in 2022. Wasn't it 2022? Do we have that one from 2022? I don't know if we did. Yeah, here, put it up on the screen here. I don't have it in front of me. So with the revelation of massive widespread fraud, deception, working closely with big tech companies about the 2020 election he's talking about. Massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Our great founders did not condone false and fraudulent elections. Obviously, they did not condone that. Understandably, they would not condone that. However, they also would not condone the entire Constitution and all laws and regulations being thrown out because you think this thing happened in the 2020 election. I called that out at the time. I will call the most recent example out at the time as something we need to stay away from. Remember, Donald Trump is not a god. Donald Trump does not get preferential treatment as opposed to any other politician. And this is my take. This doesn't have to be yours, but my take is this one exception. This law that we talked about last week, that I talked about 100 times on the show, but we really crystallized in a longer monologue last week. We're focusing on what he does, not what he says. It's important to watch what he does because what he says a lot of times is a negotiation with someone other than you. He's not negotiating with you. So you can look at these things and make sure that we put up firewalls around him. It's why I've talked about I don't want Donald Trump as a third-term president. I don't want to upend the Constitution for that reason, even though Donald Trump might have a great term. I just gave you an entire list of really good things that he's doing. That doesn't justify overturning our constitutional system. It's just where I am on this. So I'm kind of long right now on all of this, and I got more to get to on this. Let me save some of this for another separate monologue maybe later this week because there's still a lot to go to on this. Because there is an intellectual sort of basis behind the types of things that he's saying. And Trump, as is normal, when he says things, he doesn't necessarily crystallize them in perfect legalese. There is a theory behind this. And most of that theory, I don't think he'd disagree with. Most of it's okay. And it's more about being, without giving you all the details right now, more about being aggressive with the power that you do have rather than unlawfully finding new powers. And you're seeing a lot of those things when we talk about DOGE. They're being aggressive with the power they do have. They're not breaking laws with any of the stuff I just hit here. These are not law-breaking things. Of course, unions are complaining about them and they're suing, and that's normal. These are not law-breaking things. He's not breaking the Constitution. He's not upending all laws and regulations. He's not saying, well, I'm saving the country so I don't have to pay attention to the law. None of that's actually happening. You can find tweets that say it. None of it's actually happening. So that's what we're going to focus on. I encourage you, if you missed that show last week, go back and talk and check that out, because I think it's an important one. Not from the standpoint of anything that I say is super important. I'm just a citizen, but from the perspective of watching the show, and if you happen to be someone who enjoys the show, that is how I'm thinking about these things. A lot of people get all fired up and they're like, oh, well, you should be hitting this more. You should be more angry about this. You should be ignoring this. Look, this is how I think about these things, and I feel like, look, we've been together now for since 2020, so 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. Gosh, 2025, this is year 6 of this show. And I'm so sorry you've had to deal with 6 full years of all of this nonsense. But I feel like at this point, we're kind of just, we're on the same team, right? You come here, we listen to these shows, we try to work this stuff out. Sometimes you disagree with me, sometimes you agree. And we're just kind of honest in our conversation of how we come to these decisions and understand the world. And I will do my best to, through this prism, explain the things that I think are important. And you can call me dumb, and you can talk about it. But I always feel like with you, I can do that. Right? That's what I love about doing the show, is that we can talk about these things openly and honestly, and like adults, because I feel like you're an adult. I feel like this show is way too boring for you if you're a child. I have children. They don't want to hear about tax rates. They don't want to hear about nerdy stuff like that. They want to hear about fun stuff. They don't want to hear about that. So if you're here, what I'm saying is you're probably a nerd anyway, and you can deal with us.